August 25th, 1944. A suffocating heat clings to the streets of Paris, but it isn't the summer sun that has the city trembling. It is the silence. A heavy, artificial silence that masks the sound of ticking clocks and the soft unspooling of demolition wires. The City of Light, the crown jewel of European culture, is no longer a city of life. It has been transformed into a massive, interconnected bomb. Beneath the iron skirts of the Eiffel Tower, 3 tons of high explosives have been lashed to the girders. The foundations of Notre-Dame, the arches of the Pont Neuf, the grand halls of the Louvre, and the heights of the Arc de Triomphe are all wired, fused, and ready to be reduced to a heap of blackened stone and charred history. This was the final solution for a city that refused to die quietly. Adolf Hitler's orders were not merely military, they were apocalyptic. He didn't want a retreat. He wanted a funeral pyre. He demanded that Paris must not fall into the hands of the Allies except as a field of ruins. The man holding the matches was General Dietrich von Choltitz. He was the newly minted military governor, a man handpicked for his cold, mechanical efficiency. He had 48 hours to decide whether to follow the most sacred oath of his life, the oath of a soldier to his Führer, or to commit an act of treason that would save millions of lives but brand him a coward in the eyes of his nation. What happened next is one of the most tense and improbable chapters of the Second World War. It is the story of a man who spent his life destroying cities, only to find his soul in the one he was ordered to burn. To understand the weight of the choice facing von Choltitz, you have to understand the man the Third Reich had built. He wasn't a poet or a philosopher. He was a product of the Prussian military machine, a lineage of soldiers where obedience was the highest virtue and hesitation was a terminal sin. By the time he reached Paris, von Choltitz had earned a fearsome reputation. He was known as the Conqueror of Cities, a title earned through fire and blood. In 1940, he had been a key architect in the aerial obliteration of Notre-Dame, a strike so brutal it forced the Netherlands to surrender almost instantly. Later, on the Eastern Front, he led the siege of Sevastopol, overseeing a campaign of attrition that left the city a skeletal remain of its former self. He had seen the worst of the war, and he had been the one to inflict it. He was a man who did not flinch at the sight of ruins. This was exactly why Hitler chose him. As the Allied forces broke out of Normandy and the German 7th Army collapsed, the Führer's grip on reality began to shatter. He viewed Paris not as a city of art, but as a symbol of his own waning power. If he could not possess it, no one would. He summoned von Choltitz to the Wolf's Lair, his secluded headquarters in East Prussia, and looked him in the eye. The order was absolute. Paris was to be defended to the last man, and if the defense failed, the city was to be leveled. Every bridge, every monument, every utility, and every home was to be destroyed. It was a scorched earth policy taken to its most insane extreme. Von Choltitz walked out of that meeting with the weight of 1,000 years of history on his shoulders and a direct command to erase it. When von Choltitz arrived at the Hotel Meurice, his new headquarters on the Rue de Rivoli, he found a city on the brink of an explosion. But the pressure wasn't just coming from the advancing American and French tanks, it was coming from within. The French resistance, sensing that the end of the occupation was near, had emerged from the shadows. The streets were no longer safe for German patrols. Snipers hid behind the gargoyles of ancient churches, and homemade grenades were being tossed from balcony windows. By August 19th, a general strike had paralyzed the city. The police had turned their guns on the occupiers, and the tricolor flag was beginning to flutter over liberated government buildings. The German garrison was being squeezed into a smaller and smaller perimeter. Inside the Meurice, the atmosphere was claustrophobic. The maps on the walls showed the Allied divisions closing in like a tightening noose. Von Choltitz was receiving constant updates from his demolition teams. They reported that the holes had been drilled into the bridge pilings and the explosives were set. All that was missing was the word. But a strange shadow began to fall over the general's resolve. It came in the form of Raoul Nordling, the Swedish Consul General. Nordling was a master of the soft cell, a diplomat who understood that von Choltitz was not a monster, but a man trapped in a failing system. Over several secret meetings, Nordling didn't argue about politics or the morality of the war. Instead, he spoke to von Choltitz's sense of legacy. He reminded the general that the war was already lost. The Allies were days, perhaps hours away. If von Choltitz burned Paris, he wouldn't be remembered as a great soldier. He would be remembered as the man who destroyed the world's most beautiful city for no military gain. He would be a pariah in history, a common criminal. Nordling also brought up the practical. The thousands of German soldiers under his command would be trapped in the rubble of a burning city, unable to retreat, and the civilian casualties would be in the hundreds of thousands. While Nordling was whispering in one ear, the Führer was screaming in the other. Back in Berlin, Hitler's obsession had reached a fever pitch. He was no longer interested in the tactical movements of the war. He only cared about the fire. He repeatedly called his chief of staff, General Jodl, asking the same question over and over, his voice rising to a shriek. "Brennt Paris? Is Paris burning?" The tension reached its breaking point on the night of August 24th. The 2nd French Armored Division, led by General Leclerc, had reached the outskirts of the city. The rumble of their tanks could be heard in the distance, a low thunder that signaled the end of 4 years of occupation. Von Choltitz sat in his office. The telegrams from Hitler piled on his desk. Each one was more frantic than the last, demanding the immediate detonation of the city. This was the moment where the Prussian code should have taken over. The order was clear. The means were at hand. But von Choltitz hesitated. He looked out the window at the Tuileries Garden and the Louvre. He thought about his wife and children back in Germany. Under the Nazi doctrine of Sippenhaft, or collective guilt, the family of a traitor could be executed for his crimes. By refusing to burn Paris, he was potentially signing a death warrant for everyone he loved. Yet he saw the madness for what it was. He realized that Hitler had moved beyond military strategy into a realm of nihilistic destruction. To obey would be to join that madness. In an act of calculated defiance, von Choltitz began to sabotage his own orders. He told the high command that the fighting in the streets was so intense that the demolition teams couldn't reach their targets. He claimed that the explosives were being moved or that the fuses were faulty. He engaged in a high-stakes game of bureaucratic delay, all while the Swedish consul worked to coordinate a ceasefire that would allow the Allies to enter the city before the German hardliners could take matters into their own hands. He essentially held the city in a state of suspended animation. On the morning of August 25th, as the first French tanks rolled into the heart of the capital, von Choltitz made his final move. He did not order the bridges to be blown. He did not give the command to fire the charges at the Eiffel Tower. Instead, he waited at the Hotel Meurice. When the French troops burst into his office, they found a man who looked less like a conquered enemy and more like someone who had just woken up from a nightmare. He surrendered the city, signing the document at the Montparnasse station, ensuring that the liberation of Paris would be a celebration rather than a funeral. The aftermath of this decision was immediate and complex. To the Parisians, he was still the face of the occupation, a man who had presided over years of fear. He was spat upon as he was led away into captivity. In Germany, he was branded a traitor in absentia, his name cursed by the crumbling remains of the Nazi leadership. But the city was still there. The Seine still flowed under its ancient bridges. The Louvre still held its treasures. The soul of France had been preserved. After the war, von Choltitz spent several years in Allied prisoner of war camps. During his time in custody, secret recordings revealed that while he had been a loyal servant of the Reich in many ways, he had reached a point where he could no longer justify the senseless destruction. He was released in 1947 and retired to Baden-Baden. For the rest of his life, he lived with the duality of his reputation, a man who had been an instrument of war, but who, in one singular moment, chose to be an instrument of peace. Looking back, the question remains, was Dietrich von Choltitz a hero? Some historians argue he was simply a pragmatist, a man who saw the writing on the wall and wanted to save his own life by ensuring a more lenient treatment from the Allies. They point to his past atrocities in the East as proof that he was no humanitarian. Others believe that he underwent a genuine moral awakening, catalyzed by the beauty of Paris and the persuasive diplomacy of Raoul Nordling. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the messy middle. Humanity is rarely black and white, especially in the furnace of war. What is undeniable is the result. Had a more fanatical commander been in charge, the Paris we know today, the cafes, the grand boulevards, the timeless monuments, would be nothing but a chapter in a history book, a lost city of antiquity. Every year, millions of people walk the streets of Paris, unaware of how close those streets came to disappearing forever. They look at the glitter of the Eiffel Tower at night and see a symbol of romance, not a structure that was once hours away from being twisted scrap metal. The preservation of Paris is a reminder that even in the midst of the greatest darkness the world has ever known, a single individual has the power to stop the cycle of destruction. It only takes one person to say no. History is not just a series of inevitable events, it is a collection of choices. In August 1944, a man who had spent a career tearing things down decided just once to leave something standing. And because of that choice, the City of Light continues to shine.